Hey, old Bucks fans. Welcome to the Bucks Trilogy Podcast, part of the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy. I'm your guy, Scott the Vanilla Gorilla, here with my dudes, Trevor and Tyler. We're talking Bucks. Free agency has come and gone already for the Bucks. In a matter of 1 week, the roster's been overhauled per Giannis's request. It has been a strange week. Uh, I, with all the weirdness going on with the Bucks, the shitty weekend just in general for Wisconsin sports, how are you guys feeling on this Sunday night?
Well, we're recording Sunday night, and it was a strange Packer game full of a ton of holding penalties. So there was that. And I'm drinking a really strange drink composed of apple cider, cheap Kessler's whiskey, a cinnamon stick, and lemon juice. So let's get our weird on.
That let's get our weird on did not make my night any better. don't like that. Yeah, I mean, you guys hit up nail on the head. If you listen to the Packers podcast, you know how I am feeling currently. So, yeah, not great. Hopefully, this Bucks talk can improve my mood just a little bit.
All right, well, we'll try. So I'm gonna get this out of the way right away. The Bucks did not get Bogdanovich. It was a rumor. Who knows what the hell really happened? But we didn't get him. We're moving on. Is that okay with you guys? I don't want to talk about it anymore because I'm over it.
Don't make me cry.
I'm pissed. Well, okay. I'm gonna say one thing on it, and then if you guys want to chime in, you can. I am actually really okay with keeping Dante instead for a lot less money. Let's see, he's about to get like 18 mil a year from the Hawks, and we're paying Dante like 3 million this year. So I guess I'm all right with that. And we were able to round out the rest of our roster. So do you have any last thoughts on Bogey and his time with the Bucks?
Oh, God.
I completely understand what you're saying. That's a lot of money to pay Bogdanovich. But to me, he would have changed this team a lot. Because if you're comparing Dante to Bogdanovich, it's not even close to like what they're bringing on the court. Like Dante literally has to be a shooter, and he has not been that in the NBA. From 3 point, he's in 2018, 2019, 26.5%. 19 and 20, he was 33.6%. He flat out needs to be better there. And it's no longer, he's a young player. He's got to grow into his role, those types of things. He's got to play this year, and he's got to play a lot better and shoot the ball a hell of a lot better than he has been in recent years. That's my big thing with Dante. I think he brings a lot of other aspects to this Milwaukee Bucks team, but he's got to be able to hit his open jumpers. That is just one thing that if he doesn't start doing, he should start losing some playing time.
I mean, you brought up other aspects, and defense is like the one positive with him. He brings so much energy, and with now losing Bledsoe in another deal that we're going to talk about.
Hey, Jrue's fucking amazing defensively. It's not like we're losing a lot with the point guards. Wes is another one that's a big loss defensively, so Dante can bring up there. But in terms of the straight switch from Bledsoe to Jrue, the defense isn't going to decrease that much. And Jrue is a guy that's on the all defensive teams almost every year anyways. So definitely not losing a lot there. But definitely with West being gone, that's going to be a big spot to fill. And I would guess Dante would probably be number one in that spot to start filling in there.
All right, you guys brought it up, so let's move on to the biggest move of the offseason. Everyone knows this. Bucks got Jrue Holiday in what turned out to be a 4-team trade that sent Bledsoe 2 future first-round picks and 2 future first-round pick swaps to New Orleans. And George Hill ended up going to OKC, so OKC could send Steven Adams to New Orleans. And then our 24th pick, which turned out to be RJ Hampton, was routed to Denver. So you guys touched a little bit about it. Tyler, what do you think of this deal?
Well, I mean, we knew both Bledsoe and Hill were going to have to be involved in a trade like this. I'm still kind of disappointed to see George Hill go. I think we lose a lot with him. I get everyone's reasoning for wanting to move on for Bledsoe, right? He's so good in the regular season and then just chokes in the postseason. So now you're getting Jrue Holiday, who, knock on wood, is not going to do that. If it happens, it's not my fault. But I mean, like, offensively overall, I mean, Jrue Holiday's a solid shooter from three. He shot 35% last year, and that was his career mark. So if he can do that in the postseason, you're looking a lot better, and the trade's a win already. So, I mean, I think the Bucks had to shake something up. They had to show Giannis that they care about, mixing things up and whatever is going to happen to get him into the NBA Finals, because this team that was here the last 2 years hadn't been able to get it done. So is Jrue Holiday going to be part of the solution? I think there's a chance he could be.
Well, yeah, you mentioned that teams the last 2 years haven't gotten it done, but they damn well should have 2 years ago, and they probably should have this year if they would have just figured out how in the world how to play in the bubble. But that was an issue from the jump down there, that they just didn't have it when they got down there. But to me, I like the trade. The reason I don't love it is because I wanted George Hill to be on this team. Scott and I have had just sessions of times just like getting on our knees in front of George Hill.
Let's get weird. Yeah.
We love the guy. He's a great player. I thought he was a perfect sixth man for this Bucks team. When Bledsoe was struggling, especially postseason, you could come in and put George Hill in there, and he was going to be your finisher at the point guard position. He was just a guy that I think this team is going to miss quite a bit. You look at some of the other statistics of, trading Eric Bledsoe for Jrue Holiday, and I think Jrue is a more consistent, to me, he feels like a more consistent shooter of the basketball. But if you look at career stats, it's not like a major difference. Eric Bledsoe is at 33.6% from three. Jrue Holiday, 35.2, so just under 2% increase there. Jrue Holiday, slightly worse free throw shooter throughout his career, but I do think it's just Jrue Holiday fits the mold of the team a little bit better. I think he is a slightly better player. I like him on this team a lot more than I like Eric Bledsoe. So I think the fit is so much better than what Eric Bledsoe was. And I was a guy that tried to defend Eric Bledsoe as much as I could. But to me, this makes a lot of sense. It does. The only other thing that I can say is it does seem like a lot to give up for two guys that are they're still both very good players. So a little bit concerning for me there. I feel like it's just a lot to give up. But overall, I like Jrue better on this team than I like Eric.
Sure. So, yeah, like you mentioned, George Hill, I've said it multiple times that I would be willing to have his baby. I love him. He's just an awesome guy and an amazing all-around basketball player. You also mentioned the three-point shooting for Jrue and Bledsoe. So last year, Jrue was 35%. Last year, Bledsoe was 34.4%. The difference there was Jrue shot just about 6 threes a game, and Bledsoe shot 3.5 a game. And there were so many times where Bledsoe would hold the ball for 5 seconds and then just do a pull-up three, which drove all of us insane. As far as defense, they're both phenomenal defensive guards. I think that trading Bledsoe would be tough, but I think we got one of maybe 2 or 3 point guards that might be better at defense than Eric. And that's come from multiple people too. Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant have each said that they think Jrue Holiday is the best defender in the league, at least at the guard spot. So I'll take that coming from Dame and Kevin Durant, two of the most prolific offensive players in the league. So he hasn't gotten his respect the last couple of years, but I think everything else, you guys were right. In my opinion, I think this deal needed to happen, whatever the cost was. Honestly, if it would take more first round picks for Giannis to sign off on it, yeah, do it. Whatever, toss everybody at him. Because this trade is more than just Jrue Holiday. It's for Jrue Holiday and keeping Giannis happy. So there's no doubt in my mind Giannis wanted Jrue Holiday. Seeing as the Bucks didn't even put a call out to Chris Paul or anything. So Giannis must have been like, hey, I want Jrue Holiday, make it happen. And Horst did his job and he made it happen. So I also love Jrue Holiday. He's top 5 player in the league. Not by talent, but as far as my favorite players in the league. So I love the trade. I'm all for it.
And do you think New Orleans knew that? Like, if Horst is calling them, they know that's what Giannis wants. So they're just like, give us all your picks, all of them. We want all of them.
Probably. Go ahead, Trevor.
I think that's probably what happened, that they kind of figured that was what was happening, and they knew that they had the leverage in the situation and they could get what they wanted. I still, I know there's a rule of trading first round picks in the NBA. I still don't understand how this trade went through, because I feel like the Bucks don't have a first round pick for the next 18 years, it feels like.
Yeah. Well, 2 of them are just swaps. So honestly, our picks are probably, as long as Giannis and Jrue stay, our picks are going to be worse than New Orleans anyway, so they'll probably decline the swap. So those 2 might not be a big deal. The other thing with Jrue and them driving the price up, they were getting really good offers from Denver and Boston, and I'm sure other teams too. So, and those are teams that have some pretty good assets. So honestly, for the Bucks to pull this trade off was pretty surprising for me, considering our best player involved in the deal was Bledsoe. So I'm just happy. I'm really happy it happened. And I think that we've got a legitimate big 3 now. And I think Jrue slides into that number 2 spot over Chris Middleton. You guys might debate with me on that, but I think that he is that good of a player. But let's move on to the NBA draft, which happened last week. So we made some predictions in our last podcast. Those turned out to be completely irrelevant. We did talk about RJ Hampton going at 24 though, so
we did
kind of predicted the future there. So in the end, the Bucks ended up getting the 45th and 60th picks, and they used those on Jordan Nwora and Sam Merrill. Now, Jordan Nwora he was a prolific scorer for Louisville, a great 3-point shooter, good size, 6'7". He's got some sneaky athleticism. He's also not very good on defense, which honestly surprised me coming from Louisville. They're usually defensive studs. And then you got Sam Merrill, who's just a lights out shooter. Spent forever shooting the 3 ball. If he's on the team to start this year, it could be, I might be getting way ahead of myself, but it could be like our Kyle Korver replacement. And Mr. Irrelevant might not be very irrelevant for the Bucks this year. So Trevor, what do you think of the draft haul?
Yeah, before I get into the draft, I do want to mention one thing and just ask you guys one question. and it doesn't have to be a long, elaborate answer, but I just want your guys' thoughts. This Jrue Holiday trade, we're talking about it in the eyes of Giannis, right? But how much does this improve Chris Middleton, having another scorer, like a true scorer out there alongside him? How much does that help Chris Middleton?
I mean, obviously it helps a lot when you get a more skilled offensive player, but we've already talked about Jrue's defensive ability. And, I don't know what the assignments are going to look like, but Chris Middleton usually just kind of took the back burner, let Wes handle things. I mean, so really, I think what ends up happening defensively and what assignments Middleton gets might play a big impact in how he looks offensively as well. But obviously having that another guy out there you can go to all the time is going to help him. But I don't think it's the huge swing factor, if that makes sense.
I'm going to say it depends on how much stupid-ass ISO ball they do this year. If it's just going to be Chris holding the ball for 20 seconds and then taking a contested 20-foot jumper,
but he'll make
it doesn't help at all. Yeah. But to your point, Tyler, I think the Bucks ended up with a player who could actually take more of Chris's defensive responsibilities away from him, and we'll get to that later on. But yeah, I think kind of like Tyler said, though, on the offensive end, it should theoretically open it up for Chris more. Hopefully it isn't that much ISO ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely hope so. And now I'll get to the draft picks, since I rudely interrupted you, Scott, and let's get back to the draft picks. So I was actually pretty excited about these players. I started doing a little bit of research on them, and just kind of looked into the stats and all these different things. Scott mentioned the three-point shooting. Both of them very, very good. Jordan Nwora was a 3-year player at Louisville. Really, it was 2 years of meaningful playing time for him. In those 2 years, he shot 37.4% and 40% from three. Sam Merrill was a 4-year player, but meaningful. Well, I guess he's still his freshman year, got 26 minutes a game. But sophomore, junior, and senior seasons, he was up around 35 minutes a game for Utah State. And he shot the ball incredibly from three. 45%, 46, 37, and 41% going from freshman to senior year there. He was lights out, like Scott said, from 3-point. And I do think, maybe it's crazy to say, because 60th pick in the NBA draft, typically that's not going to amount to anything unless you're Isaiah Thomas. But this feels like a guy that is just going to be able to come in, play 15 minutes a game, and just space the floor. You put him in a corner, and you're allowing the defense to have to space out a little bit more. He just feels like he's going to fit. I think Jordan Nwora is going to fit as well. But to me, both of these players fit extremely well. I just think Sam Merrill could get some time because he is such a lights-out shooter. The other thing I want to mention, and I don't think this isn't something that's going to translate to the NBA, but they were very effective. So Sports Reference, or Basketball Reference for the NBA, but it's Sports Reference for college basketball, has their PER stats and win shares, and they both are actually pretty good. So PER for Nwora is 22.6 in 19 and 20, and career 21. Sam Merrill, 20, and in the 19-20 season, he was 25, career average of 22. So they both were very effective in college. Again, not something I expect them to be 20, 25 PER players in the pros, but that kind of consistency and efficiency from both of these players is very, very exciting. And hopefully that means they can give us a little bit of juice coming off the bench in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, I mean, I think offensively, touched on it. They fit the mold of what the Bucks wanted. But sometimes at the same time, it's like second-round picks in the NBA is like your 30th round picks in the MLB draft. Like, what are you going to get out of them? Who's going to step up? Like, you really don't know. So offensively, I mean, Sure, the three-pointer is a little bit, longer in distance in the NBA. I feel like they shouldn't have that big of an issue adjusting, but I mean, I'm not quite sure on their size, their defense, how well are they going to respond to a very defensive-oriented coach. Those are
Probably
the
not
things I'm
good.
looking for. Yeah, exactly.
Probably not too good. And I do have to say, I'm not certain on this, but from everything I've been seeing, the Bucks have the hard cap, and as it stands, they won't be able to have a 15th player. And if that is the case, it's probably Sam Merrill that doesn't make the cut. So he might be someone that we end up having on the herd. And then who knows if we end up making another move, we call him up or something. But that's kind of where we're at in the cap situation right now. But God, I hope he doesn't slip through our fingers, because his pro comparison was Duncan Robinson, and that guy tore us up in the playoffs. And if we could get a guy like that on our team, that'd be perfect next to Giannis. Like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Could you imagine Duncan Robinson and Giannis running pick and roll, or Giannis cutting to the rim and then his player can't sag off of him, you know? So it would be cool to see him stay. But like I said, as of right now, it doesn't seem too likely. But let's look at the other guys they added. So they started really slow with the first day of free agency, and the first move came overnight, which was the Bucks re-signing Pat Connaughton for the first time. And it turned out that Horst made a mistake by offering a contract that wasn't totally legal. So the original 2-year, $8 million contract included a player option for the second year, but that is not allowed for early exception. So when you re-sign a player and you sign them, you can go kind of into the cap without being penalized. But that isn't the case if you give a player option. So apparently, due to the mishap, Horst needed to add an extra year and kind of bump up the salary a little bit to make Pat and his agent happy. So the result was 3 years, closer to 16 mil. So what do you think, guys?
Well, by that sigh, I don't think you love the deal, Scott.
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a huge fan of it. I feel like if you're going to give that kind of money to Pat, I feel like there's better ways to use it, like maybe an extra player on the team. I am a fan of Pat Connaughton. I think I like the way he plays for the most part. I just don't know if he's worth that kind of money. And I don't know if his play over the last year, 2 years, has really proven to me that he's worth the money. Pat Connaughton, I was expecting to get, a 35 to 38% free or 3-point shooter, and he's been around 33% the last 2 years. Free throws, he doesn't really get to the line, so that doesn't matter all that much. It just feels like he didn't impress me all that much. I love his energy. I love kind of the secondary things he does, but what we needed him to do was shoot the basketball, and I just thought he would be better, and he was not that. So the money really makes me hesitant about this. One of my least favorite parts of the off season so far.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll jump in. You're right. He should have been a better 3-point shooter in the past couple of years, and I think he really fell off during the playoffs too, which was really disappointing, especially when Bud keeps handing him minutes like he's Ellen DeGeneres. So it's ridiculous to me. That, especially because he probably had more blow-by block attempts than 3-point makes during the playoffs. And it pisses me off. But what I do like about this is I like Pat as a player. Him and Giannis are like BFFs, which, again, another move that I assume Horst did because he knew that they were BFFs. But you're able to sign somebody to a bigger contract without getting completely like screwed over as far as the tax is concerned. So now you have kind of a bulkier contract that you can toss in on trades. So looking forward to like the trade deadline, now you have somebody with a $5 million contract that if you need to make the salaries work out, you can with him. So if I tried to reframe it that way, I like it better. But I do think that the 3 years is a little scary, but I do think the third year is non-guaranteed. I could be wrong on when I say that, but so that's the way I'm trying to look at it right now. Tyler, what do you think?
I think that's a good way to look at it. And you helped correct me earlier when this was first all going down, because I was like, oh, 5-ish mil for Pat. Like NBA players, I feel like get paid so much more than any other sport. I'm like, that's not too bad. But then you're like, yeah, but Wes Matthews signed for 3.7. And I'm like, oh, yeah. When you phrase it like that, it's a bad deal. So that just kind of helps reiterate the point. But the trade deadline piece is interesting. So I think that. The Bucks have been really good about getting rid of the bad contracts. And while this one I don't think is like as terrible as like the Tony Snells, the Ilyasovas,
Miles Plumlee.
Yeah.
Come
God. I could still see him falling or being traded. So.
Sure. Yeah. We don't want to talk about those contracts because that would be an hour-long podcast. So yeah. I guess we'll see how that all turns out. I really hope it wasn't like a legit mishap by Horst, because apparently when we hired him, he was like a salary cap guru is what they called him. They said like he was a genius when it comes to that stuff. And no GM in the league would make two blunders like that in 1 week with the Pat contract and then the Bogdan contract. So I hope they're not true, but I digress. We're going to talk about actual free agency and how the Bucks did revamping their bench. So over the past couple of days, they ended up picking up some decent bench players. They took DJ Augustin, who a lot of Bucks fans were hoping they would. They also got Bobby Portis, kind of a sneaky signing in my opinion. Then they got Bryn Forbes and Torrey Craig. The Nuggets ended up taking back their qualifying offer that they gave to him, and he became an unrestricted free agent, and he joined the Bucks on a contract, a 2-year. I think that Portis, Forbes, and Craig are 2-year contracts, with the second being player options as of now. And then DJ Augustin is replacing Ursans. He's got a 3-year, $7 million a year, and the third year is a player option. Or is non-guaranteed, I should say. So I guess out of those four, who do you think stands out? Or is there anyone that you really want to dive into more, or what?
Well, I know everyone, like you said, was hoping for DJ Augustin, so naturally, I'm not going to start with him. I do think Bobby Portis is sneaky, like you said, because I was looking at his three-point percentage, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize that he could shoot the ball that somewhat efficiently, 36% over his career, shot 40% in 2018, 2019. Granted, that was a pretty limited sample size. So I feel like he could bring a lot to the table, especially as a scorer, like a lightning, like lightning in a bottle, is someone who, if our offense is struggling, send him in there. He can make something happen. And then you mentioned earlier, I'm trying to remember which draft pick it was, with like a Kyle Korver type replacement. Well, Bryn Forbes shot 6 threes a game last year and shot really efficiently. So I think that's your replacement right there.
I like that. I'm going to sound stupid for a minute, but I played a game of 2K21 with the updated roster, and I took 6 threes with Bryn Forbes. 4 of them were contested, and he made all 6. So if that's a sign, I'm excited. Trevor, how about you?
I was going to talk about something else, but if that's a sign, that's a steal of a signing there for John Horst with Forbes. That would be incredible to get that kind of production. Obviously, can't expect that type of production from him. But as Tyler mentioned, he is a guy that is kind of a volume shooter. At least he had started to be more of that the last 2 seasons for the Spurs. So that's something that is exciting. You know, a career average 40% from 3. He's an exciting player, I think. One thing I did want to mention, so Tyler said he didn't want to start with DJ Augustine. I want to go to DJ Augustine. So to me, I like DJ Augustine. I thought he would be a good player for us. I was excited when we saw him until I saw that contract. I am not a fan of that contract. I was not a fan when we signed Ersan to that contract. I do think beer burp. I do think he is going to be able to help us quite a bit. And he's going to be a good 3-point shooter, you know, a career 37, basically 38% from 3. Not a guy that's a high volume shooter. He's been averaging about 3.5 on his career in terms of 3-point shots. So not a very high volume shooter, but I feel like he's a guy that if you get him in the corner, you know, kick out, Giannis kicks it out, he's going to be a guy that nails it almost every time. So that's exciting. I'm not a big fan of that contract of 3 years, $21 million. I just do not like that. But for the most part, the strictly free agent contracts, outside of Pat Connaughton and to a lesser extent DJ Augustine, I really like the other 3. I like the potential. I like the 1-year option or the 1-year contracts basically with player options from them. So I do like those contracts. I'm hoping DJ Augustine lives up to the contract. That's the biggest thing with him.
I've been a big fan of DJ for a long time. He's, in my opinion, one of the best backup point guards you could have. Guy's got a lot of energy. He's undersized and he's not the greatest defender, but he always plays with energy. He's always like disturbing offenses on the defensive end, despite not being a great defender. But if you look at like the playoffs a couple years ago, he basically carried the Magic in that first round series against the Raptors. Granted, they lost in 5, but I love him. I saw something that he was just amazing at catch and shoot threes. A couple of years ago, he was in the 99th percentile for percentage.
That's exciting.
This exciting. Year, he dropped down to, I believe, 90th percentile, and the person who was right above him was George Hill, like directly above him. So he's great at that. He doesn't do it a whole lot because he's got the ball in his hands a lot, but he's not going to on this team. It's going to be Giannis driving and kicking it out. They also said he's phenomenal on pick and rolls, which guess what the Bucks do a lot? Pick and rolls with Giannis. So I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities. He's been stuck on the Magic for the last how many years? He can't really showcase what he's got. But Bobby Portis, he's a guy I wanted the Bucks to draft back a few years ago when instead they took Rashad Vaughn. He's a good shooter for a big. He's energetic. Maybe it's a good thing we didn't draft him because maybe Giannis would have got his nose broken during a practice. But he's horrible at defense. He's god-awful at defense, which is why he can't be a starter. But maybe if he's sharing the floor with Brooke or Giannis, it won't be that bad. Same with Forbes. He's strictly a shooter, not really anything on defense or creating shots. He wasn't that great for the Spurs last year. He played a lot, which says that Pop had a lot of confidence in him, but I don't think the Spurs fans really did. And then there's Torrey Craig. I love that guy. He was part of he did all the grinding for the Nuggets last year. He would take the tough assignments every single night. He would guard LeBron, Kawhi, or Paul George, whichever had the hot hand. He's a big dude who can guard basically 1 through 4 on the defense. I'm super excited because I think he's our Wes Matthews replacement. He's shot 32% from 3 last year, but it's been a work in progress. But his ability to guard up to the 4 doesn't make him better than Wes Matthews, but he's got some more utility on the defensive end there. So kind of like we mentioned, taking some off Chris Middleton's plate or maybe even Giannis's plate, to have him on the team is going to be huge. So I think out of all of them, I'm most excited for Torrey Craig. I think it's a steal that we got him for that contract, but we'll see. I think we got 4 very good bench players. So let's look at kind of who is out and who's in for the Bucks, so we can get a feel for the topic that I've seen a lot of on Twitter. A lot of people are debating if the Bucks are better than last year. We'll get into it in a second, I guess. But honestly, I think if Bogdan was never mentioned, it wouldn't be that big of a debate. But that's my personal opinion. So I kind of match people up for who left and who came in to kind of replace them. But we'll just go into this. So Bledsoe is out, and he's being replaced by Jrue Holiday in the lineup. Then you got George Hill out and Augustin coming in as the backup point guard. Wes is out, and then you got Torrey Craig, who's going to be our star stopper on the defensive end. Korver's out. We got Forbes to replace him. Robin Lopez out. Bobby Portis in. Marvin Williams and Ersan out. Then Nwara's coming in. And then Sterling Brown is gone, and maybe Sam Merrill makes the cut. But when you look at that chart, boys, what do you think? Are the Bucks better or worse than last year? And if so, where do you see the big differences?
See, where is the big point for me? I think the Bucks got a lot better in terms of the guys who should be playing the most in the playoffs. I think this was Horst's way of saying, hey, Coach Bud, now you can't just only play Giannis 30 minutes in the playoffs because you don't have as deep of a bench.
Yeah.
At least on paper, we haven't seen these guys play. That's just my interpretation. I could be wrong, I guess, but looking, you look at who they've acquired and you're like, okay, I don't think the Bucks are as deep as they were last year, but up front, they got better, and that's what you need to win a championship. You need your big-time guys to come through. You can't just rely on a Fred VanVleet like the Raptors did to frickin' go off and go shoot 80%. That only happens if you're the damn Raptors, and it's never going to be in the Bucks' favor.
Why, Tyler? I told you I'm having a rough day, and then you mentioned that shit.
I know.
Are you kidding me?
Wait, did you see VanVleet's contract, by the way? My God, it's 20-something mil a year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, he's not worth that money, so that's fine. Okay, I feel like, Tyler, you kind of hit it on the head. I think, up front, that starting lineup, I think I like a little bit more this year. Still kind of questioning who they're going to put in that starting 2 role. Is that going to be Forbes, just a lights out shooter? He's not going to do much else. Who they're going to have Jrue Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis, Brooke. Who's going to be that 5th guy is my main question. I think Forbes makes a lot of sense in my opinion. But do they feel Torrey Craig out there to help with the defense? I just don't know. That's one thing that I have a question about. But point guard, I think we got better, at least starting point guard. Backup point guard, I think we got worse. I think George Hill's a better player than DJ Augustine, but for the money that we saved, which is like 2 million or something like that, not like it's a huge difference, but we do save some money there, so that's good. But I would give Hill the edge there. Wes and Torrey Craig, I'd probably give the edge to Wes just because of his shooting. Kyle Korver and Forbes, I think we got better there. Kyle Korver's just old, and I don't think he shot as well as we anticipated him to shoot.
He played way too fucking much last year.
And
way too much.
And like I said, he didn't shoot like I thought Kyle Korver would shoot. Robin Lopez, Bobby Portis. I'll take Bobby Portis. I like the shooting aspect. He's a little bit more versatile in that regard. I would take Bobby Portis over Robin Lopez. And these last ones, I mean, it's hard to say Jordan Nwora is going to be better than Ersan Ilyasova because he's a rookie, and a second-round rookie at that. How can we expect him to be better? But, at a certain point, Ersan's contract was going to get moved this offseason. So, and they're putting in a rookie there. Hopefully he can make an impact. I think if that's it, if we get we're not going to get Malcolm Brogdon level contributions from him, but if we can get something like, Sterling Brown in his rookie year, nothing spectacular, but he was able to show up a little bit, give us contributions when we need it. If we can get something like that from Nwora or Sam Merrill, I think that would be awesome. So for the most part, I think I would slightly lean what we got now versus what we had last year. But I do think it's relatively close because there are some players that I wish we definitely still had on our team.
Yeah, I think it's close too, but I just think the upgrade of Holiday over Bledsoe is going to be so big when it counts because winning 60 games doesn't mean shit anymore. Like Bucks fans, I think Bucks fans might feel more confident going into the playoffs if we don't win 60 games. We've lost so much confidence in that. But to have a guy like Holiday who's shown that he can step up and play big time in the playoffs. He hasn't done it a whole ton, but he has shown up for the playoffs. And I'm so excited for him, but otherwise the bench, kind of like you guys said, I don't think it was too drastic. I think that we're more top heavy now, which is good. Won't be playing 12 guys in the playoffs and have Giannis play like 33 minutes. But Trevor, you mentioned the 2-guard spot. I'm interested in that too. I think it's going to be between Dante and Torrey Craig. Now, Craig started a lot of games for the Nuggets last year, and that was a team that made it to the conference finals last year. So I think they're going to value his defense and his you don't need that much offense out of somebody when you have Jrue, Giannis, Chris, and Brooke on the floor. So I think they're going to value defense over anything in that unit, and I think they give the nod to him because he's such a versatile defender. But we'll see. I love Dante coming off the bench too. I think him and Augustin and Forbes and Portis coming off the bench, that's a pretty solid offensive unit. So we'll have to see where it goes. As of right now, that's our team. I feel like they're gonna make another move. Honestly, I don't see DJ Wilson being on the team start of the season. I think that they might try to move his contract just so they could sign Sam Merrill and fill out their 15-man roster. But I also didn't talk about our two-way players. I'll just mention them real quick. We got Jalen Adams, we brought up from the Herd. He was actually the runner-up to Frank Mason for G League MVP last year. Guy can score. I think he averaged about 20.7 points per game. He's a good player. And then we got Diakite from Virginia, who I like too. He's a 6'9" forward from Virginia. he was a big part of them winning the championship a couple years ago, and he's a Virginia boy. He's a solid defender. Started draining three a little bit more, so I think those are solid two-way players that could maybe have an impact like Frank Mason did for us last year, which I'm a little bitter that they didn't keep the contract offer for Frank Mason. I get it that they had to get rid of it to sign these players, but it would have been cool to have him on the team. But do you boys have any last thoughts about the Bucks roster right now?
Well, maybe with the slightly you can question as deeper bench, maybe these two-way players will have a bigger impact than what it has in years previous, because otherwise it seems like, oh, we're in March, let's play this guy 48 minutes in the game so he can score 25 points because someone's injured, give him the night off. But I don't think that'll be the case this year. Maybe they'll actually have some increased value. I know Frank Mason did last year, but I'm just speaking from some other guys that we've had.
Yeah, I want to go back to one thing you mentioned. I think what you laid out for the starting lineup, Scott, makes a lot of sense. I like that more offensive heavy, bench scorers coming off the bench. And if you put Torrey Craig out there and he's your defensive guy, yeah, you'd like him to still be capable offensively, and I think he is. But, you have that kind of four guys that you can bring out that can score for you off the bench. Why not get a guy where can take the Kawhis, the LeBrons, all of those types of players? Kevin Durant is going to be a big thing, right? There's a lot of players that Torrey Craig can kind of take for himself and be that guy on them, and that frees up everyone. That frees up Giannis to be that rover. That frees up Brook. That frees up Chris Middleton. It just makes their job a lot easier, and hopefully that means they can score a lot more. So I definitely like that idea that you had, Scott. Other than that, I do think $4.5 million for DJ this year. So that definitely could be something that they could look to move on from that contract. Now, on Spot Track, Scott, I don't know if you know this, but it says for 2022 in red qualifying, and that would be 6.4 next year. Is that something did they give him a qualifying offer for next year, or what? I'm very confused by that.
So that's what it would be.
Okay.
So you don't give qualifying offers for that far ahead.
Okay, good. Well, because I saw that number and I'm like, why the hell would we be paying him that next year?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a way to move on. That is a way to sign your draft picks if that's the way you want to go. You talked about Pat Connaughton being a trade piece. I don't know the value of DJ Wilson, but with a $4.5 million contract, could he be someone thrown in as well to one of those deals just to make the money work? So that could be something to watch too. And maybe it doesn't even get to that point. Like Scott said, maybe it's I guess you can't really cut him because his dead cap is what his normal cap is. So cutting him gives you nothing. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with those types of contracts. DJ Wilson in particular, what are they going to do? Are they going to be able to sign all those guys? That's definitely something that we're going to have to watch. And as you mentioned, Scott, I think that means there's going to be some other moves coming up.
Yeah, I think they're going to have at least one more move up their sleeve. Honestly, it might be kind of hard to keep Dante and DJ at this point after they were in a trade and then got nixed. I don't know how bitter they'd be, but and then you also mentioned, it got me kind of excited just picturing Torrey Craig guarding the other team's best player, whether it be LeBron, Kawhi, or whatever. And then with our drop defense, so they have to get by Torrey Craig, and then if they get by him, they're meeting Giannis or Brook at the rim. That's some strong defensive layers right there. And as good of a defender as Wes was this year, I think Torrey Craig is better just because he's bigger and he's got more flexibility with who he can guard. So I'm excited. I'm hyping myself up about it. I hope other Bucks fans are kind of moving on from the debacle of what happened this past week, because we do still have a good team that could definitely still earn the top seed in the East. As long as you have Giannis, anything's possible there. Now, hopefully, we can push to the end goal to at least get to the NBA championship. So we'll keep waiting to hear Giannis sign his extension. I believe he's still in Greece, so obviously he's not really in a rush, which tells me he probably has his mind made up already. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in the coming days. But thanks for joining me, boys. I'm excited for the Bucks season to start in a month from now. Coming soon. Shortest off season ever. All right. Well, thanks for joining. And thank you for listening to the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy and the Bucks Trilogy Podcast.
Fear the deer.
Go Bucks.